uh, welcome back to the Knitting in Green knitting podcast. My name is Claire. If you missed the first episode, would not blame anyone for skipping out on that because it turned out way longer than it really needed to be. I had hoped to get this out a little bit sooner, but I recorded it a couple times because I don't even know. I guess I recorded it a couple times because of technical difficulties. I just when I hit end recording, I just didn't. I knew I wasn't satisfied. I felt like I was just kind of saying a lot of words, but not saying a lot of things. So I'm re-recording this post Thanksgiving. It is now December, and let's hope that this goes a little bit smoother than I did a month ago. Well, not quite a month ago. Yeah, I noticed while I was editing the first episode that I tried to say that I wasn't going to talk, or I was going to try not to talk fast. And then by the end, I was talking pretty fast. So I'm going to do my best to slow down a little bit. What happens is I normally, if I'm watching YouTube, watch everything on double speed because my attention span is really bad these days, and I'm trying to multitask and watch videos. I mean, knitting podcasts can be anywhere from 20 minutes to some people do hour and a half, 2 hour videos, which honestly I love. I love a good 2 hour video of people just yapping. That's kind of, I enjoy it. But I know that's not for everyone. I also have to admit that does take a lot of time, so that's part of why I watch things on double speed. But I think that has made me talk faster than I should be, and I kind of stumble over words a little bit. So I will try to stay slower this time. Probably would not recommend anyone watch my videos on double speed, even though it saves time, just because I know sometimes I talk a little bit too fast. But this time I will try to slow down. Maybe by the end of it again, it'll be fast. All of that to say, I'll give it a shot. No promises. Yeah, so it is finally nice chilly weather, so I get to really bust out the knits, including this, which is a new finished object since last time. I'm gonna try and insert some footage of me so you can see it a little bit better, just to get a better idea of what it actually looks like beneath the shoulders. But this is my entrelac, butchered American pronunciation of the French word entrelac, Noro sweater, using some yarn that I showed off last time that I was kind of struggling with figuring out how to use. But I did land on this, and since then, I actually finished the whole sweater, which is really exciting because I was having a really hard time figuring out how to use this specific yarn. I will maybe pop in some pictures last time or from where it was before. But the story of this whole sweater is that I bought 800 grams of this Noro Ito in the colorway Nabari at my local yarn store when it was on clearance, just because I had always wanted to try some of the color shifting Noro yarns, but they've always been kind of frighteningly priced. For good reason, of course. But I was never really ready to bite the bullet, and I thought this would be a good opportunity, even though I had no business buying yarn at the time. And I probably should have thought it out a little bit before I did, because I didn't need to buy it, to be honest. And I'll get into it later, but honestly, it was not my favorite experience. So I initially started just casting on a normal, just a pretty standard vanilla raglan, just self-drafted, just fudging the numbers a little bit. But I didn't love the way that this yarn it became very micro stripy because of the stitch count and spreading the color shifting on such a big circumference. So I didn't love how that was looking. I don't really wear stripes very often, so I didn't love how that was looking. So I ripped that out. And after that, I tried creating something similar to the Beads of Joy by James and Watts, except again, I was self-drafting this because I didn't really want to use that pattern, and it was also a different gauge because this is worsted Aran weight or so. So I self-drafted sort of these like modular zigzags, and that was okay. I didn't really love how it was looking, and I think it was because I couldn't control where the color shifts were happening enough to where I was really satisfied with how it looked. And then the shaping with those zigzags just became too complicated, and it was kind of not working out. So I ripped that out as well. I tried doing just modular straight columns for like cable work, and I thought that it had potential. It would have required more testing, and I was just kind of like sick of testing things. And then I remembered I had actually a couple years ago printed out a pattern for it was a free Debbie Bliss pattern for an entrelac sweater, which it was like bottom up flat, I want to say, and then the sleeves were just straight stockinette. And I realized that would actually be a really good way to use the color shifting yarn, and I think it even called for Noro yarn in the pattern, because the blocks are a smaller stitch count. So as the blocks are formed, they maintain more of a single color, and you get more of the effect. So I took that idea, adjusted the stitch counts for the entrelac technique, because I felt like the blocks in the pattern were a bit small. So I increased them to 10 stitch blocks instead of, I believe, 5 stitch, maybe 4 stitch. And I'm pretty happy with how this turned out. Sorry, I wrote down notes this time in the hopes that it would make things a little more coherent, and I would be able to actually give information, because last time I would reach a project and I would start talking about things and be like, well, I don't remember, and I don't feel like looking it up, so last time was very disorganized. It's fine. It's really not that big of a deal. At the end of the day, this is just me talking to my own computer as if it's a Zoom meeting and hoping that maybe like 5 people watch it. So, but this time I wrote things down, so hopefully I can actually cover more information in case people do actually watch this and do want to know more than just like how I feel vaguely with no real concrete facts. So the yarn is Noro Ito and the colorway Nabari. It is 100% wool, and I guess it's hard to see now that it's worked up, but it's pretty thick and thin in some areas as it like shifts from the colors, and I think that's pretty common with Noro yarns. Like they kind of embrace that like rustic texture. It's also definitely more of a rustic wool. I mean, I find it comfortable enough to wear close next to skin, even though I do have something under it right now. But I don't find it super itchy. I can see some other people maybe finding it pretty itchy. And it definitely softened up after walking. But yeah, and you can see like this, I do think the sleeves give a pretty good idea of the different colors that it shifts through. There's a lot of this red, a lot of these browns and yellows, so it is very, autumnal vibes. And honestly, my favorite part is, oh my god, I was doing this last time and it was so awkward. Where's a good example? Like, you can see on some of the blocks, every now and then there's just like a really vibrant pop of something, a little bit of cobalt blue. Those are like my favorite parts, where it's kind of mostly one color and maybe it's fading into the next color, but there's just like one little fleck of something really bright and beautiful. Yeah, like sometimes in the yellows it's got these pinks and a little boop of red, little boop of brighter yellow. That was like really exciting to watch work up. Yeah, so I did enjoy that aspect of it, and I think the technique really taught me a lot about picking up stitches. I still don't really love doing it, but I'm definitely more confident about doing it on just kind of a straight stockinette row. I think my instinct is usually to add some kind of selvage stitch to make it easier, but I actually think it ends up cleaner if you just pick up off of just a standard stockinette edge, just because of the way the stitches lay. I actually think it fills up any holes a little bit better than if you, say, slipped stitches or did garter. What else to say? Yeah. Oh, the yarn, the Ito. I did the different yarn for the cuffs, the neck and the hem. But the Noro Ito, I found a bit fragile in some places. Like, there were any areas that just appear a bit thicker were just more loosely spun, which is what creates that cool texture. But I think also because I had ripped the past attempts out a couple times, I did find that the yarn broke a couple times, so I'd have to spit splice a lot of ends. And I had a bunch of balls from the modular ideas that I tried out and didn't really love, so I did have to do a lot of spit splicing. But I mean, that's why we wash our projects before we wear them. So I used almost the full 800 grams of the Noro Ito. I used 762 grams. So I have 38 grams left over, which I have already set aside for another project to be used as immediately as possible because, as I've said before, I really hate having leftover yarn. Yeah, so I used 762 grams, which leaves me 38 grams left over from the original 800. And I felt like that wouldn't be enough for the cuffs and everything. And I thought it would look weird, to be honest. So what I did was I picked up some Noro Madara in the color number 22 to do the cuffs in just a pretty nice, I don't know if it's like slightly warm of a brown, like a little bit reddish, but not super. It's kind of neutral, a little bit warm. But I thought it complemented the colors in the yarn pretty well. Like these two triangles are in the Ito, and then this is the Madara, and it blends pretty seamlessly. The Noro Madara, if you haven't heard of it before, even though I think it's pretty well loved on knitting YouTube, it is a 60% wool, 30% silk, 10% alpaca blend. Again, with that kind of thick and thin spinning consistency. Definitely less scratchy than the Ito, probably because of the silk and alpaca. But I found it to be kind of ropey almost. Like I don't know, there's something about it that I guess, again, because of the silk and alpaca, didn't have as much give. But I think because of that, I found it kind of hard on the hands when I was working it for these bits. And that's also probably because I sized down the needle. So it was a tighter gauge than it probably wanted to be knit at. But I didn't love it, which I was kind of surprised by because I feel like everyone and their mother has knit, like some oversized cardigan in Noro Madara and the colorway Sake. And I haven't really heard much negative experience about the knitting experience. I didn't love it, so I don't think I would get it again for any larger projects. And I do have quite a bit left over, which with the remainders of the Noro Ito, I think I'm going to use for a project. I think I've already cast it on. But yeah, I think Noro yarn is beautiful, and I think when it's worked up, it looks really lovely, and I think a lot of people have made really cool projects with it. But I think after making this, I've decided it's probably not for me, at least not in this form. So, I mean, I'd be open to trying it again. I think there are tons of different ways to use it that I haven't quite tried yet. But I think for the moment and for my wallet's sake, I probably won't be picking up any other Noro yarns in the near future. In terms of construction for this, it was a bit weird because the pattern that I was initially inspired by, the Debbie Bliss entrelac pattern, I cast it on just for the front panel flat, so like half the total circumference, basing it off roughly the numbers in that pattern, as well as a sweater, or not a sweater, a sweatshirt, just a plain store-bought sweatshirt that I have that was pretty oversized and had the fit that I kind of wanted. I didn't really swatch. I tend to not really swatch things for self-drafted pieces, even though I know that probably would help with estimating fit. But I'm kind of lazy, and I feel like if I don't have an exact image of what I want in my mind, there's no point in really trying to be that specific. So it did actually end up a little bigger than I thought it would, which is fine because I found that I really do like this amount of ease. So I started with the front panel flat, and also working flat I think helped me work out how the shaping was going to go, because I had never done entrelac on this scale before, so I was a little bit uncertain of how it would turn out and how to decrease for the armholes and shape the neck and all of that. But it was actually pretty simple. I mean, it's really, when you think of it like a grid, entrelac is really just making sort of diagonal squares. So when you cast on for entrelac, you first start with those bottom triangles, and then you just kind of grow from there, and those diagonals actually naturally form shapes that are easy, especially given a certain amount of positive ease. It's pretty easy to approximate the shape of a sweater from that. So I was working straight for a bit, did some decreases, straight again, and then doing portions for the shoulders and neck. And then from there, I actually connected back the two shoulders for the back area, and then kind of worked it like up and then back down, if that makes any sense. And then I used some scraps to pick up actually the sides of that front panel, and then as I worked down the back, I connected it, I decreased it back onto the front, if that makes any sense at all. And like now that I've finished this, I do think this could have been done in the round, just because after I had to do the sleeve, well, I didn't have to, but I did the sleeves in the round, so now I kind of understand better how that works. But I think entrelac is easier done flat, because when you do it in the round, you have to do a short row to turn yourself, because you're knitting this direction, then this direction, then this direction, with every row of squares. So I actually think it's easier to conceptualize flat, because the first time I had to connect the sleeve in the round, I was pretty confused, and I did get it eventually. And there's some pretty interesting short row shaping to shape, I think, this sleeve cap area. So you can see that actually this block goes directly into this block because it's not a straight edge, and there are some triangles from when I decreased for the armhole on the body. And then to decrease in the sleeves, I actually just decreased across the circumference in each of the blocks the amount of stitches in a block. So most of the sweater is done with 10 stitch squares, and then as I went further on the sleeve, it became 9, then it became 8, and I think these last triangles are 7 stitches. Yeah, so it was really interesting, and I think it makes me really realize why there aren't so many entrelac sweater patterns out there, because having done this, I can imagine it's probably really difficult to grade a pattern across sizes, because your stitch counts are pretty fixed. And I think it'd be easier, like in the Debbie Bliss pattern, if, say, your blocks are smaller, which wasn't really the look I was going for, and I think is also a bit more laborious. But now I understand why I was having such a hard time finding a pattern like this, because it's a lot of work, I think, to figure out. And maybe that's a challenge I could take on in the future. But yeah, there were a couple patterns, but a lot of the projects on Ravelry were not making me very optimistic about what the experience would be, or they were just totally not size inclusive. I think there were a couple one size patterns, which is just never just never encouraging. It's a real shame that there weren't many size inclusive patterns with this technique out there already. I understand why that is, but I'm always going to try and support size inclusive designers, and if I have a concept that I can't achieve by doing that, I will just draft it myself. And, with the hopes that maybe if I do learn how to grade sweaters, I could release a pattern myself. But I do think... I feel an obligation to only support designers who are size inclusive and to, as best I can, only purchase patterns and share patterns that are size inclusive, especially if, money is going into that. So, I mean, that's a goal of mine. Obviously, nobody's perfect. I could make a mistake with that at some point, but, and I've definitely, purchase patterns that are not size inclusive before I was really paying attention to that and thinking about it. But I think I think we have a responsibility towards size inclusivity, even me, who talks to maybe 5 people who watch this video, or whoever follows my Instagram. I don't think anyone actually cares what I'm saying. I should really think things out before I start talking. I think I'm just gonna have to cut out a good 10 minutes of this because I'm just rambling about size inclusivity and anyways, I genuinely, I thought I was going somewhere. I just completely lost the plot. If anyone wants to share resources on learning how to grade garments, that would actually be very helpful, because I would love to make a technique like this more accessible to people who are not comfortable drafting it themselves. Because I do think there's a gap in, if this is a technique or a look that you're interested in, it is pretty difficult to learn it in a practical way with a full garment on a size inclusive range. Because I did look for other patterns that use entrelac on a bigger scale, and I just couldn't find anything that went above maybe a size XL. And even then, from the looks of it, it didn't seem like the pattern was super clear. So I would love to know if anyone who's watching might know. But long story short, I will probably cut a lot of that out. This is my entrelac Noro sweater. And I'm very excited. I've worn it a ton of times. And also about the yarn, it's definitely pilling. Not crazy, but it's pilling. But that's also because I've been wearing this every other day for the last couple of weeks. So I think it'll calm down after a bit. So I'm not that concerned about it. But just FYI, it does pill. And I think I have said more than enough about this. My other finished object, which I believe you would have seen last time, is... Or maybe you didn't see it last time. I can't remember. I think I did show it last time, but maybe I'm wrong. I clearly don't remember. It is my off-gauge mini mock neck tank by Jessie Made Designs. I clearly have not woven in my ends, but that's fine, because when I wear it, nobody's gonna see that. So it is knit off gauge because instead of the pattern calls for just a fingering weight yarn, and I really wanted to use some yarn that I picked up from a local yarn store for a more wintry version to use as more of a slip over vest. The yarn I used is the Murky Depths dyes Yakapaca lace and Yakima fingering held together in the colorway St. Remy for both of them. The Yakapaca lace is 41% alpaca, 36% silk, 13% merino, and 10% yak. And the Yakima fingering is 65% merino, 20% silk, and 15% yak. And I mean, even alone, they were super soft, but together, they're so soft. And I, honestly, if I saw this on a hanger in a store, I would not buy it. But I do love it now that I have it, and the colors that are found in this are colors that I wear a lot and I have in my wardrobe. So I think it's actually a really, really lovely colorway. And I'm hoping, well, it's a little washed out on camera. I think the colors are a bit like deeper in person, but yeah, you can see the different variegation, and the chartreuse in it is what really drew me to it. I mean, this is knitting in green, so I do have a favorite, but I do love the flecks of kind of like the purpley pink and the blue. I really almost never wear gray, so it's a bit out of character for me, but I was really curious about the yak content, and I think that's what really drew me in, and I knew that I would be able to get, you know, a slip over type garment out of a single skein of both. So I decided to just go for it. What else to say? I mean, it's pilling a little bit, which I expected because it's so soft, but it's not so bad. It's definitely things that I can just pick off pretty easily. But it still has a good fuzz to it. Yeah, I mean, you can't really tell in the video, but it's got kind of this luster to it, which I just think is really, really gorgeous. I used every little bit of the lace weight, and I even had to do a couple rows of the ribbing with the fingering held single, just because I wanted to use every last bit, and I did end up with a little bit left over of the fingering, but I think I can use that in some kind of just like a little hair bow or something. And oh yeah, because I was also a little bit concerned about yardage as called for in the pattern, even though I was knitting a size down because of the bigger gauge. So this is a medium where I normally would choose a large, or it maybe a 3 instead of a 4. I don't remember if the pattern uses numbers or letters, but I trust Jessie Made with my life, and I pretty much always knit the 4th size with their patterns. But I did do waist decreases just to, you know, save on yardage a little bit, and I think I do like the shape that creates when I wear it. If you don't know about this, the construction is pretty simple. It is top down. I believe you start with the back panel, work until the arm split, and then, or work until where you join back in the round, and then you do the same on the front. You pick up one, pick up the other, and then join them. Then you do the neck and the bottom rib, probably with a smaller needle, I think. And then the armholes are worked in a way where you don't have to pick anything up. They just lay flat on their own, which is always lovely. I think it's just ribbing. But yeah, super clear pattern. Very reliable designer. I will definitely be making a summery version of this without a fluff when we approach that season, just because I think it's going to be a really good staple pattern to have in my library. The last finished object that I have is, I guess it's, okay, here's my take. I think a lot of people consider a single sock to be a half finished object. I think it's a full finished object. I think socks are 2 finished objects. Because this is a full object. A pair of socks is a pair of objects. So in my opinion, a single finished sock is a single finished object, and a pair of socks is 2 finished objects. So I'm calling this a finished object, even though I have to do the second one. But this is my Pixel Tweed sock by James and Watts. Again, I think I'm pretty sure that I showed this in the last episode. I don't think I posted that episode until like right when the pattern was released. But the pattern is out now. This was a test. I love James and Watts' tests because they're so chill. Like, I don't feel any, I mean, obviously I feel the obligation to finish by the deadline, as, you know, your responsibility as a tester, but there's no group chat, so I don't feel the deadline looming over me. And I think that is actually very helpful personally. So yeah, I'd only finished one by the deadline, but that was all we had to do based on the parameters. And I obviously will do the second one, but it is definitely labor intensive as a sock. This is mosaic color work all over, with 3 colors. So it is, not hard to manage your yarns, just a little bit more effort than it would be with a single color or even two colors. But the texture is so fun, and I like that I used a variegated like yarn for one of them, just because I think it makes a really fun effect, and it's really plush sock. Normally I just kind of do vanilla socks, so it was interesting to try something else. And it definitely kept me more engaged than a vanilla sock, but it also made it take a while. And it was the pattern calls for 2mm needles, which I have done for socks in the past. Is definitely it feels like you're knitting with 2mm needles. I will say that much. But it was fun, and I love this stitch pattern enough to where I used the code that I got from being a tester to buy the pullover pattern that they have with the same stitch pattern. So I would love to make that at some point as well. I just don't have the yarn for it in stash, so that's gonna have to wait until either I'm putting myself on a yarn ban, hopefully, or with caveats for next year. So I don't think I'm gonna be making that sweater anytime soon, but I would love to have it. The yarn that I used was KnitPicks Stroll fingering for the purple and the yellow. This is Dutchess Heather, and this is Dandelion. And Stroll fingering is a 75-25 merino nylon. And for the third color, which is maybe hard to see, but it's mostly white with pink and blue and yellow throughout, is Malabrigo Ultimate Sock in the colorway Unicorn Bark. And that's also 75-25 merino nylon, but they feel totally different, which that was pretty cool to experience. Obviously they're the same weight, so they play well together, but the Stroll fingering I found to be more of like I could feel the individual strands, and sometimes I would split them. And the Malabrigo, I guess it's similar, but it felt more round and almost a little bit more plasticky, even though they have the same percentages of wool and nylon. So I thought that was really interesting. What to say? I think for the second one, I think I want to do it cuff down, actually, and just following the row counts of this one. Just because I'm running pretty low on the Malabrigo because I had used it in a previous pair of socks. So I'm a little bit worried that I won't have enough to do the entire sock if I start it toe up, like the pattern is written. And I think reversing the direction won't affect the pattern that much. And this way, once I have both socks, they should look the same, at least when it's sticking out of shoe, because I tend to wear my hand knit socks in shoes because I don't really wear socks around the house. And I would prefer that they look as similar as possible, but if, like half or most of the foot is in a different color, I don't think you would even know. So that's my plan. I know that you really should just cast on the second sock immediately after finishing the first one, but my hands were so tired after making this that I didn't feel like it. So that is... maybe my goal will be to have that other sock finished. Probably not by next podcast, but maybe by the spring. That might be a little too generous. That might mean that I just don't work on it. But I'm going to set that goal. By spring, which I consider to start in March, I will have the second sock. So you can hold me to that. You can. I would prefer that you don't, but you can. So that is my pixel tweed sock. I think that's a full finished object, but I think most people would disagree. So I guess functionally, you can't really... well, you can. Probably wouldn't have just a single sock, especially if it's a lot thicker than all your other socks. But this is my problem. I'll start talking and then I'll just talk to myself and just keep going for no reason. The point has been made. Second sock by March 1st. That's my goal. Works in progress. I only have a couple of them, so this shouldn't be too bad. The first is a test knit that I'm doing for Vert and Rose, and I only have a couple weeks left, so I need to pick up speed a little bit. But this is, well, it's curling in on itself a bit. But this is my ewelina vest, which is a pattern that's coming out soon. It's a tabard style vest, so it's completely open at the sides, and there will be ties to close it when you're wearing it. Kind of not looking forward to making those ties because they are double knitted, which just takes forever, but it'll be really nice. Yeah, so I've done the entire body of it. I picked up for the neck and got the wrong stitch count, so I ripped it out, placed markers for the neck to hopefully do a little bit better of a job, but I think this color is nice. Yeah, so this is an Aran Weight slipover, knit in Drops Air. Maybe you can see it better. Drops Air, which is a chainette construction yarn. So it's got, I think the nylon content is just the chainette tube where the fibers are blown into. Doing the thing right. Hopefully you can see that. And it does have a bit of bounce because of that. It is 65% alpaca, 28% nylon, and 7% merino. And it's super soft. I do think it's gonna pill, which is fine. I don't mind that. But this is the colorway Parrot Green, which I thought would be a little bit more of a yellow tone green. It's definitely more blue toned, which is fine. I still like that. It's like the same color as my wall, which is kind of funny. But yeah, I was very excited to see that they had a bright green in their color range. This is, I think, the first time I'm actually, maybe just for tests, but maybe across the board, I think this is the first time I'm ever working in the recommended yarn of a pattern, which is a bit ridiculous, but I usually just use what I have or use what's easy to get. And I feel patterns are always calling for either something really expensive or just something that's maybe more easily available in Europe, and I can't be bothered, you know? And I mean, for a test, obviously I gauge swatch to make sure that I hit gauge properly, but honestly, I usually just swatch to see if I like the fabric. I think that's honestly more important because I'm usually not making anything that needs a super precise fit. So it's, I'm a lazy person. But obviously for a test I swatched and made sure I hit gauge. I'm not sure really what else to say about this project. I mean, the test is still in progress and clearly not finished. Some people I think have finished already or are pretty close. So it's pretty exciting to see people with their vests. I mean, compared to the James and Watt testnet experience that I was saying is like pretty chill. It's, and you get like an email and you fill out a form when you're done. This one is a bit more involved. There's a group chat, which is exciting and motivating, but I also find maybe is not my favorite way to run a test. I don't think there's anything wrong with it, and I think a lot of people are enjoying that community aspect of it. And I, of course, enjoy seeing other people's photos and seeing where they're at. But it's a lot of notifications sometimes, which is not shade to the group. I think it's shade to me who doesn't like receiving messages. I'm really not a very good texter. So, but it's been fun, and I'm, it is a privilege to test patterns, even though, there is a whole debate on whether that is unpaid labor or not. I don't really know where I sit on that one, to be honest. But, yeah, I mean, I'm excited to have it finished, excited for the release. Vert and Rose does a really great job of knitting size-inclusive patterns, or of writing size-inclusive patterns, rather. And I think that is part of their ethos. I think that's important to them, so it's definitely a designer I want to support. So, yeah, no, I'll stop it there. Quick and painless. The other work in progress that I have may be a bit difficult to show. Dear. This looks a bit ridiculous. Uh-oh. Okay, that's fine. So this is what I had alluded to earlier, regarding using up the scraps or leftovers from this sweater that I'm wearing. What is happening here? Okay. This may not look like much of anything right now because it is a bit difficult to decipher. Even I am having trouble, and I made this. This is going to be a bag. So fibers everywhere. This is going to be a bag. I cast on how do I describe the construction of this without sounding like a crazy person? So I double knit. This is gonna be I don't know the anatomy of bags. It's like the opening of the bag, I guess. And I double knit it just so it would lay flat. And it's going to have 3 straps. So 1 big long strap and then 2 small ones. So I could hold it like a... I'm not very good with words. So I can hold it sort of like a shopping bag or over the shoulder. So right now I am working on the double knitting for that long strap, and then I will do 2 smaller ones, and then I will pick up around the cast on edge and work it down before seaming it closed at the bottom. But my plan is to do either 1x1 or 2x2 color work using the same yarn, the Noro Madara and the Noro Ito leftovers, so that the color kind of just shifts vertically. So yeah, this is pretty difficult to show, but hopefully that made any kind of sense. But I think because I'm not really into stripes and because I'm not that much of a sock girly, I think bags may be the way to go in terms of using up my scraps. So that is my test to see if this concept of a bag works. And I think color work will add structure and then also use up more yarn. So that's an experiment, and we'll see if that pans out. It's also, I think, excuse me if I pick things off my mouth the entire video because there's just wool everywhere. I would like to get into writing patterns, and because I find garment grading pretty daunting at this moment, I think accessories are going to be the way to go. So if this works out, I will try to write a pattern for this bag. If you caught the first episode, I have those flower scrunchies that I'd love to write a pattern for. And I guess there's no reason why I haven't done that yet, but yeah, I would love to start writing some patterns, start with accessories just to get the language and the experience of putting things into words a little bit better. If anyone wants to follow the progress on that, stay tuned, subscribe, all the things that people say about that. Just because I feel like I have some fun ideas for knits, but not so much the skills to share them quite yet. But I think those are the only 2 projects I'm actively working on. Obviously, I still have the works in progress from last episode that I haven't worked on at all. But some of those are more summer projects, so I'm not really interested in working on them very much. I have a couple plans for new cast-ons soon that I might cover in another video because this is starting to get long, even though I think I'm probably going to cut a good 20 minutes out. But I think I would like to make a separate winter knitting plans video. Or maybe I can call it like first half of 2025 knitting plans video or something, because I definitely have yarn and stash for projects that have ideas tied to them already, and I think maybe if I speak them aloud into existence to someone other than myself or my sisters, they might actually happen. But I don't want to make this video over an hour long again, because that first one was such a pain to edit. So, but I do want to leave off with some acquisitions, because I have gotten some, even though I probably shouldn't have. Well, again, I get myself into these situations because I have no self-control. But I signed up for this test knit, did not have yarn and stash to work with at that gauge, and I did want to try this yarn, so I did put in an order with Wool Warehouse, and because they were having such a sale, even getting the garment quantity of the drops there was not enough to hit free shipping. And everybody knows that even though technically you are just spending more money when shipping is free, it negates itself and you're saving money, which is not how money works. But because of that, naturally, I, in my Wool Warehouse mesh bag, picked up Drops Karisma in 2 colors. Let's see if they have any fun names or if they're just color 7 and color 7 and color 18, which are just blue and red, which I'm going to use together in a 2-color brioche project. Yeah, I think they're blowing out a little bit, but I think this is a really fun combo. If you couldn't tell by the first episode and this episode and the way things are, I really love color. So I am planning on making the Excuse Me Dickie by Stephen West, and I can get more into detail on it in my winter knitting plans video, which I haven't recorded yet, that I hope I will record soon before it becomes irrelevant. Just, good winter accessory in a fun color combination. Alright, in my defense, this was a very good deal. One of my local thrift stores just recently has got a yarn bin, which is very exciting, but maybe not so good for my wallet. But I'm not allowed to look anymore. It's good to know that it exists for when I'm off my yarn ban. That I haven't started yet. It's not official, but we're pretending it's official. My local yarn store had a ton of Brooklyn Tweed Shelter in the colorway. Well, they had a ton of colorways, but this one they have the most of. This is the colorway Postcard, which is a really lovely, warm pinkish gray with flecks of red in it, which I know I literally said in this video that I'd never wear gray, which is true. But there's a sweater quantity for a really good price, and I have some mohair that I can hold with this that I think will look really, really lovely, because that's kind of more purpley with a lot of flecks of red and other colors in it. So I think this yarn being gray will really help that mohair sing. So yeah, I got I think 10 skeins of this for over half off the retail price. So even though I probably shouldn't have, I bought it, but I will use it. But 2025 I think is going to be the year of the yarn ban. I will okay, I'm putting it into words in this video, even though I'll probably make another video later that puts it into words that are more thought out and a little bit less rambly. My plan is to not buy any new yarn online, period. No new yarn online. um, if I am getting yarn, it has to be local. Even if that means it's not, like locally sourced, it has to be something I can physically go pick up locally, which I am fortunate enough to have more than a few yarn stores in my local area. And if I do that, it has to be to supplement yarn I already have in stash so that I can use it in a project. So I can't just be buying a new sweater's quantity of yarn that isn't directly going to be used with something I already have. So, if I've got some yarn that I want to get a mohair for, I can get that mohair, but I can't just get more yarn with no concrete plans. Even if a pattern comes out and I just need yarn for it to make it, but I'm not using something I already have with that yarn. The other exceptions are for gifts. My mom has already requested another small scarf, and she doesn't like merino for whatever reason. So I am gonna have to get her probably cashmere again. And I don't have any on hand, so that is something I'm gonna have to shop for. And the other exception is travel. If I am going anywhere that I've never been before, or I'm just trying to get something from somewhere I travel to, like things that I can't physically get where I am, especially with banning online. Hopefully I won't just be like, oh, well, I don't live in the state right next door, so I'll buy some yarn in New Jersey. It's more for like if I travel to like Japan or something, which I don't have plans to do. But that's the idea. I'm not allowed to buy yarn online, yarn that I'm not directly using with something I already have in stash, and then I can buy yarn for travel or for gifts, which are two things that don't happen very often because I don't love making gifts because I'm a selfish knitter, and I think that is kind of a really negative term to use for that. But frankly, it's a lot of effort, and I have too much anxiety over whether or not the person is going to like and use the thing. So I would rather spend the energy making things for myself and then finding other ways to gift things for people in my life. But that is my ramble on a future yarn ban that will be officially enacted at the beginning of 2025. Although this is what I've in theory been operating on for most of this year, except I've broken the rules several times. So 2025 is the year I will not break rules. And that does not mean I can break whatever rules in December. But hold me to it. The sock deadline in March and the yarn ban. Goodbye, people in my laptop. I will see you next time.